Hello everyone, so this is episode 2 of reading the Hello Kitty, the Christmas tree book, so I'll just get straight into it. We are on chapter 3 of the first book, just because this chapter was super long, so I didn't want to include it in the last video, but oh well. Hello Kitty's super idea. Miss Brown said she would call the caretaker to come and take the tree away. Dear Daniel spoke quickly. There had to be something they could do. But Miss Brown replied sadly that the tree was too badly damaged for them to even try to use it. Hello Kitty hated to see everyone looking so sad, miserable, but suddenly she had an idea. Even if they didn't have a tree, they could still get the decorations up and put them around the hall that afternoon, couldn't they? It would make it look lovely and festive even without an actual Christmas tree. Everyone cheered up. Miss Brown thought that was an excellent idea. There was all sorts of things in the decoration box: tinsel, paper chains, fairy lights, sparkly ceiling decorations that hung down. And she was sure that with a bit of work they could make the hall look great. She went to her office to fetch the key to the cupboard where the Christmas decorations were kept. Hello Kitty looked at some of the tree branches on the floor. They could even use those too. They could put them on top of the piano so that the hall would still smell of pine needles. Perfect. The others agreed that Hello Kitty was right. It was sad not to have a tree, but they could still make the hall look very festive for Christmas. While they waited, Miss Brown to come back with the decorations. Hello Kitty told them all about the play. They were very excited to hear that it was going to be the Nutcracker. Fifi definitely wanted to audition for the part. She wanted to be Clara. Hello Kitty did too. But she needed to think about whether she would audition or not in case she would be designing the costumes. Tammy said she just wanted to be something small. She didn't like the idea of having to sing or dance on her own on stage, but she would be happy being in a group. Dear Daniel wanted to audition too. He didn't care what he was, but definitely wanted to be in it. It sounded like so much fun. Hello Kitty told them that she was going to be the costume designer. She started to show them her sketches for the costumes, but just then Miss Brown returned with the key. So they all went into the hall to help her get the boxes of the decorations out of the cupboard. She unlocked the door. There were shelves inside holding 4 massive cardboard boxes, but why were there little shreds of paper all over the shelves? And why did the boxes have holes in them? Miss Brown's forehead creased in concern. This didn't look good at all. She pulled a box out and looked inside. Oh no, since last Christmas a family of mice had made a nest in the cupboard and they had eaten through the decorations. Miss Brown pulled all the decorations out of their boxes. The paper chains were threaded and the tinsel was nibbled up so badly that the strands had fallen off the string. She held up one of the glittery ceiling decorations to look at it more closely, and it fell apart in her hands. The wire on the fairy lights had been chewed through completely, and they were ruined too. She quickly checked through all the boxes, but the mice had nibbled everything. This was a disaster. There was no Christmas tree and now no decorations either. Hello Kitty and her friends looked at each other in dismay. If they couldn't decorate the hall, it wouldn't seem like Christmas at school at all. Just then, the older girls came over to see what they were doing. They couldn't speak because of their sponsored silence, but Miss Brown explained what the problem was, and that It looked like the school wouldn't have any decorations for Christmas at all this year. The older girls looked very unhappy this year, but they all still couldn't say anything. Miss Brown explained to Hello Kitty and her friends that some of the older girls and some of their friends had helped make the paper chains when they had started at the school. That year, they had held the decoration day where the whole school had spent the day helping out and making decorations. As Hello Kitty looked at the older girls and their sad faces, all of a sudden one of her super special Hello Kitty ideas popped into her head. She gasped. Miss Brown agreed. She had an idea on how they could decorate the hall and get a new Christmas tree too. Chapter 4. Hard at Work. Hello Kitty quickly explained her idea to Miss Brown. What if their year had a decoration making afternoon the following day? They could use materials from the school art cupboard and bring things in from home. And even better, if they got their friends and family to sponsor them for something while they made the decorations, they could raise enough money to buy a new Christmas tree too. Miss Brown thought it was a brilliant plan. Would they do it as a sponsored silence like the older years, she asked. But Hello Kitty had an even better idea. Instead of a sponsored silence, she thought they should have a sponsored sing instead. Every time someone asked them something, they had to sing a reply. No one would be allowed to talk at all, only sing. Miss Brown laughed. She thought that sounded great. She would print some sponsorship forms off for the year and have a word with Miss Davy. Would the Friendship Club help organise it all? They beamed. Of course they would. Miss Davy was very sad to hear about the ruined decorations, but she loved the idea of the sponsored decoration making afternoon the next day. She gathered up all the children in Hello Kitty's year to tell them about it. Hello Kitty waved at her twin sister Minnie and then stood up at the front and told all of the classes about her idea. Everyone was eager to help, and they all volunteered to bring things in from home and to get people to sponsor them to raise money. It would be wonderful if they could work hard enough to decorate the hall and raise enough money to get the tree too. Fifi said she would ask her mum if there was any spare glittery materials from the skating costume she had made, and Minnie suggested that she and Hello Kitty call in at the craft shop where their mum had bought things for making jewellery. Maybe there would be some leftover bits and pieces they could have. Fifi wrote a list on the whiteboard of useful things everyone could bring in the next day. While Daniel asked people for ideas of things they could make, they decided on paper chains, snowflakes, glittery holly leaves, bunting with piles of stockings, and Christmas puddings. Meanwhile, Tammy handed out the sponsorship forms. Hello Kitty explained that everyone would need to try and get people to sponsor them. For every hour that they sang instead of speaking, the longer they managed to do that for, the more money they would all raise. Everyone started to talk at once. Miss Davy clapped her hands even though everyone was excited. She still had to tell them about the audition for the play. They would be at the lunchtime next day. Everyone who wanted a part needed to sign for an audition time. She told them the story of the Nutcracker, then played them some of the music so they could start preparing. The class was buzzing with excitement. By the end of the school auditions and sponsored decoration making afternoon, they couldn't wait. After school finished, Hello Kitty ran over to where Mama White was waiting by the school gate. She was bursting with news. First, though, she wanted to ask Mama if the others could come over for a friendship club meeting later that afternoon. She thought it would be fun to make mince pies and Christmas cupcakes and bring them into school for the decorating afternoon. Mama agreed, and as soon as the rest of the friendship club had spoken to their parents, it was all sorted. They would come round at 5 o'clock when Fifi had finished her ice skating lesson and dear Daniel had to have his hair cut. On the way home, Hello Kitty told Mama everything that had been happening, and Minnie asked if they could stop at the craft shop. Mama took a look at her watch and said they could. Mama parked the car and Minnie and Hello Kitty ran inside. They told the nice lady behind the counter all about their sponsored decoration afternoon at school and asked if there were any leftover items she didn't need anymore, that she would be happy to donate. The lady smiled and said she would be glad to help out. She bustled into the back room and returned with 2 large boxes of leftover glittery material, card, and red and gold and green ribbon. Hello Kitty and Minnie squealed. It was just what they needed. Then the lady looked thoughtful. There should be something about the sponsored decoration day on the TV news. She mentioned that her son was a reporter for the local news station and promised she would tell him about it. How exciting! Hello Kitty and Minnie thanked her and carried the boxes to the car. It was time to go home and get ready for the friendship club meeting. At 5 o'clock, dear Daniel, Fifi and Tammy arrived. They all set to work in the kitchen baking. Hello Kitty put on some Christmas songs and they all sang along as they worked. Hello Kitty and Minnie made pastry, rubbing butter into the flour until it became all crumbly. Meanwhile, dear Daniel mixed the sugar icing for the cupcakes. Fifi wiped some butter around the mince pies tins and found the rolling pin and cutters while Tammy mixed the cupcakes ingredients together. By the time they had finished, they were all covered in flour and the sink was overflowing with bowls and spoons. Mama had put the cakes and mince pies into the oven and the kitchen smelled lovely. While they washed up, Hello Kitty got everyone some lemonade. They were all very thirsty after their hard work. They had just finished washing the last bowl when the timer on the oven went off. Minnie ran to fetch Mama and she took the mince pies and cupcakes out of the oven. They smelled delicious. Once they were cool, they spread the icing on the cupcakes and decorated them with edible glitter and icing. Holy leaves, after that there was just one final thing to do. Taste them. They all agreed that both the cupcakes and the mince pies were completely yummy. They packed them into the tins to take to school the next day. Then it was time for everyone to go home. As Hello Kitty put on her pyjamas that night, she thought about the school the next day. Auditions for the play, making decorations and only being allowed to sing and not speak. She had a feeling it was going to be the most fun school day ever.